When we finally finish harvesting our garden, or after a trip to a farmer's market or even your supermarket, sometimes we have too much, more than we can eat before it starts to go bad. This is where food preservation becomes an important part of gardening and saving our food for the months ahead. One of the easiest ways to do that is with water bath canning. Join me today as I share with you the basics of canning. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I've been preserving my garden harvest for a couple decades now. The idea is pretty simple. We just want to keep those microbes that will spoil our produce away so that we can enjoy the food rather than them enjoying the food. The yeast and the mold and the bacteria that can cause decay is all around us. But when we learn the processing of food preservation, we can take those microbes and kill them, which allows us to have our fresh harvest last well into the future. There are a number of ways that we can preserve our fresh produce. One of the most common that we do all the time is to freeze it. You can also dehydrate it. I do a lot of both of those. Pickling, salting, sugaring are other methods that we can use to preserve our produce. When it comes to canning, we can actually combine some of those methods of preservation so that the finished product can be stored on a shelf in a closet or a pantry and last for many months. Now, while the process is pretty simple, and I'll demonstrate it in the minutes ahead, you do need some specialized equipment. There is an initial outlay, but almost all of what you'll see I've had for well over 10 years. In fact, some of these tools are almost 20 years old. The idea behind water bath canning is to heat jars in boiling water. So you need to start with a big pot. You can buy a specialized canning pot like this one that has an inner insert. This size is designed for pint jars, or you can get a bigger pot. This is designed for quart jars. Same idea with an insert on the inside that holds the jars stable. You don't need to invest in a canning pot. Now, each of these are about 20 years old because that's how long I've been doing it, and they last for many, many years. I expect at least another 20 years out of these. As long as you have a pot that's tall enough so that the jars are completely submerged and then covered with an inch or two of water beyond that, you can use pots that you already have. A lot depends on the jars you're using, and that's the next thing that you'll need to invest in. You can usually find jars that come with everything you need sold by the dozen. These are half-pint jars, these are pint jars, these are quart jars. They do need to be canning jars. You can't use that mayonnaise jar that you bought at the supermarket. These are specially made to be able to handle the high heat without breaking. The jars are going to come with bands. The band just screws onto the top. Now, the purpose of the band is to hold the lid. Now, you can buy all of these components separately, but when you get them initially in a box, everything you need is included in the box. So you take your jar, you put the lid on it, you take a band, and the band just holds the lid in place. This is the basis of everything we're going to be canning. Almost everything involved with canning can be reused, like these bands. Now, these silver bands are about all you're going to find now if you go shopping. I still have a lot of these brass-colored bands. This shows that these are many years old because you can't even find them anymore. The lid is one use only. The way these are made is with a special coating on the inside. And so as part of the water bath canning heating process, this is going to soften, and this is actually what's going to seal the jar. And that's what we're really after. We're preserving the food, and then we're sealing it in this jar so it can last a long time. This seal needs to be good. One use only, don't reuse this, but just about everything else can be reused. Like these tools, you may need a funnel to fill the jars. Take your jar, funnel, fill it, pretty easy. You're also going to need a jar lifter. So the jars are going to be hot when they're in the boiling water. The idea behind this is to be able to lift out the jar. The rubberized portion goes on the bottom. These wood handles are what you hold onto. You'll probably also want to have a magnet wand. Now the idea behind this is to pick up the lids that are also going to be hot when you place them on the jar. And then having something to work out the air bubbles is a good idea too. I have this little plastic wand. You'll often find all of these sold together as a kit. Go ahead and get all of them. Again, these are about 20 years old, and they're still working after all this time with no problems. When you decide to preserve your fresh produce, you should look for an approved recipe for that type of produce. It's really not a good idea to use Aunt Harriet's preservation method from 100 years ago. We've learned a lot more about food safety since then. Having a recipe that's been approved, that follows safety guidelines, is really quite important. In the United States, the agency responsible for the food safety is the USDA, and you can find a lot of information on their site, and I'll link to it below. I like to use books like the Ball Blue Book. This is actually the 1983 edition because all the information is still good. The recipes in here will work. I also like the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. Gives a lot more options as to how to preserve the different types of foods. The key is use a good, reputable, approved source to can your food, and you can just about be assured that it's going to be safe to eat when you open the jar. I also suggest getting a kitchen scale because many of the recipes are by weight. And for the recipes that call for salt, use a canning or pickling salt specifically designed for food preservation. Today I'll be pickling some of the Boston pickling cucumbers that I just harvested from my garden. I'll be using the cucumber sandwich pickles recipe from this Ball book. Following the recipe, I'm using one of two methods in water bath canning, and that's hot pack versus raw pack. Now with hot pack, you actually cook the produce first and then pack it while it's hot into the jars. With raw pack, you put the raw produce into the jar and then cover it, usually with a boiling liquid. Because this recipe is a hot pack, I have it cooking behind me right now. While it's heating, I take the next step, which is to get the jars and the lids and the bands all ready to go. The jars need to be washed well with hot soapy water, and then you can put them into your pot and heat them up to boiling in the water that you'll be using as part of the canning process. The lids also need to be heated, but not to boiling. Just heat these so that the water is hot, and that'll be enough to soften the material on these lids. The cucumbers are hot and ready to pack. Now it's time to get the jars. I'll begin by just lifting them out of the hot water And then using the jar lifter, I'll carefully pour out this hot water. And so now into the hot jar, I'll put the hot cucumbers. This first jar, I'll go ahead and use the funnel and just drop the cucumbers in. I want these packed pretty well, so I'll apply a little bit of force to get these cucumber slices into the jar. As it starts filling up, I'll remove the funnel as needed so I can see what I'm doing. This looks good for now. So I'll go ahead and with the cucumbers in place, ladle some of the hot pickling liquid that these cooked in and completely cover these soon-to-be pickles. I want to add the liquid till it's about 1/2 inch from the top. That's about 1 centimeter. And this is where this little wand comes into play because I want to dislodge any air bubbles that might be underneath these cucumber slices. The cucumbers submerged, as many of the air bubbles as I can get out. Now I'll take a moist paper towel and wipe the top of the jar. We want the top to be as clean as possible so that the lid is more likely to seal. If you have little bits of food or some of the juice, you might not get a good seal. So it looks pretty good. Now I take my magnet wand, just come back, grab one of these lids and place the lid on the jar. Then I take a band and begin screwing it onto the jar. Again, the purpose of the band is just to hold the lid in place. We don't want to crank down on this. We're just tightening it until we feel some resistance. Air will escape during the heating, and we want that to happen. If you screw it too tight, that air might not be able to get out, you won't be able to form a vacuum, and you'll lose your good seal. With the third jar filled, and now the band in place, these 3 jars are ready to go back into the hot water and then begin the hot water bath canning. You can use this rack for putting the jars in and then lowering into the water, but I find it a little cumbersome and it doesn't allow you to put a lid on the pot. So what I like to do is to take a cloth, a tea towel or a washcloth, and sink it down to the bottom to act as a barrier between the hot bottom and the jars. And especially when I'm only doing a couple jars, this is my preferred method for heating. And so now I'll just take these jars and set them into the pot on top of the cloth. And now the 3 jars that this recipe makes are in the hot water. They're submerged and they're completely covered by the hot water. It's about 1.5 to 2 inches in my pot. We want this to come to a full rolling boil. So I'm going to take the pot lid and put it on, turn up the heat a little bit until I get that full boil. That's a big reason why I don't like using this. When you put this in and it's filled with jars, especially for these smaller pots, you can't get the lid in place. You can do the whole thing uncovered, but the heating of the water and the consistent temperature, that rolling boil that needs to happen during the entire processing time, is easier to manage with a lid in place. Looking at the recipe, We want to figure out how long that rolling boil needs to happen. For this recipe, it's 10 minutes. It's very important, and all of these books give you the corrections, that for high altitude, you need to add extra time. Now I'm at 7,000 feet elevation. That means I need to add 15 minutes to the processing time. So though the recipe says I only need to process for 10 minutes, that would be true if I lived at sea level or below 1,000 feet elevation. Because I'm so high, I'm using that 10 minutes plus an additional 15 minutes. So once this reaches boiling, it'll be boiling for 25 minutes. That's a big reason why I have so much water above the jars, because some of that water will be escaping as steam. When we reach the full boil, we can start our timer. With the lid on, you can moderate the temperature and adjust as needed, but you need to maintain the boil. We'll be back in 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, I remove the lid and turn the heat off. And now I'll just let it cool down for about 5 minutes. And now we remove the jars from the pot, trying to keep them as upright as possible. And I'll move them to another towel. I'm not really worried about the water on top. It tends to drain pretty quickly, but you can dab it with a towel. And now we're waiting for these jars to start cooling down and give us our final seal. As these jars cool, the vacuum that's been created will suck the lid down. Occasionally, you'll hear a popping sound as this lid completely seals. What we're looking for is for this to be concave. The middle of it will actually be lower than the upper part. You can touch it and feel that you have that concave lid, and that's a good indication that it has sealed. And so now I'll just leave these jars undisturbed for 24 hours. You want to put them in a location where they're not going to be jostled by people walking by just to see what's going on, and try to keep them out of a breeze so that there's not an abrupt temperature change. At the end of 24 hours, I'll check to make sure the seal has held. If the seal isn't good, well, you can reprocess following the exact same methods, or just put the jar in the refrigerator and eat them first. If the seal does hold, go ahead and you can remove the band for storage, and they can easily store for 6 months to a year. This method, the water bath canning, is suitable for high acid foods, those that are 4.6 pH or below. For low acid foods, the ones that are above 4.6 pH, you can follow the same basic process, but you need to use pressure canning tools. That's a pressure cooker that actually has an increased temperature level. It increases the temperature up to 240 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what is needed in low acid foods to kill not just the microbes, but the spores that could be harmful to our health. The high acid takes care of all that, which is why you can use a water bath canning method. Once you have the supplies and once you've started the process, you can keep going. That water is hot. I can easily whip up another batch for canning and just keep it going. I do that with jams and jellies. I'll devote a whole afternoon and just make dozens of jars of jams and jellies, or pickles, or whatever it is I'm trying to preserve. It's great to learn how to do. It's easy. You should definitely try it. And to see some of what I have preserved using water bath canning, watch one of these videos next. I'm Gardner Scott. Enjoy gardening and preserving.